Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I was excited to have on Darian Jones, also known as DJ. Now, this has been a long time coming. DJ is well-versed in both corporate America and the startup world. This was a fun episode kind of talking about the pros and cons of each one, Darian's or DJ's tips and tricks on how to navigate corporate America. Really just an insightful episode for a lot of people. So I hope you enjoy. So DJ, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hey Ryan, no problem, man. Happy to be here.
It's been a long time coming, man. We've gone back and forth trying to get you on the show, but you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I mean, last time, we're both busy and, you're doing a lot of stuff. But, yeah, happy to be here and definitely staying busy with a lot of stuff.
So let's talk about who DJ is and what you got going on.
That's a very wide net question, Ryan. But I'll keep it short and maybe I can dig into it a little bit. But I've four times founder, but I've also worked in big tech, worked at some of the biggest companies, Amazon, Zillow, John Deere. And of the four companies I've started, one of them had an exit. I'm an advisor for two of them now. So just staying busy, I guess, and in the tech entrepreneurial ecosystem is how I would best probably summarize it.
Yeah, you got a lot of stuff going on, man. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, you're in the startup world one day, then you're in the corporate world the next day. So I'm like trying to figure out exactly what DJ's doing on a day-to-day basis. But one thing that we have in common is we like to talk about personal branding a lot. So how did you kind of establish your personal brand, and what are your strategies for building that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you're doing a great job at it, right? And so a lot of the same things that, like, the processes that you follow, right? Being consistent and all the things that, I think people need to know. But I would say that the difference and the slight difference I've realized over the last couple of years is, like, I'm having to build, like, also a corporate brand, right? And then also I'm building, like, the social media brand, and then trying to lead with the tech brand. So I've been kind of, like, trying to figure out, like, how to strike this balance. And what I've landed on recently is that, like, it's just all one brand to me, right? So I'll have, my link, some of the stuff we'll start posting on Instagram, probably be posted on LinkedIn just because the algorithm likes. Like, my brand right now has just been gym, corporate advice, right? Trying to help people out, and also entrepreneurship. It's kind of like my big three. It was traveling for a while, but I'm living a different lifestyle now. But with that being said, to answer your questions, it's like focusing on, like, my main pillars, posting consistently, and like we were just talking about before we got on camera, I don't have a digital product, right? So I think for me, it's just really focusing on what I'm already doing that I can just, quick and easily videotape, like the gym, or if I'm getting ready for an interview, I'll give people some tips, but I'm not overthinking it. But
I think for you too, a personal brand would be trying to sell yourself to big corporations, potentially in that realm, right? You're not necessarily selling a digital product. You're selling yourself as someone who's qualified for an upper echelon role at XYZ corporation, or whatever the company is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so to that point, like, that's been a whole nother, like, journey, right? So how I brand my resume, how I brand my LinkedIn, it's very intentional. And I think, of talking with people, I've been working with people just as I've been interviewing for corporate roles. I've been working with other people who are also trying to get into big tech and all this. And one of the main problems is, like, they don't know how to tell their story, right? Like, it's not that you just worked at company and you did X. It's like, what outcomes did you produce, blah, 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 and really articulating some of that and the journey and how far you've came. And, on your resume, I think that's, like, a vast difference of, like, getting past the AI algorithm that's screening out resumes to begin with, and not. So it's kind of, like, different from social media branding, but I think branding in general does have some of those same connotations, right? How do you tell that story about who you are and why you're the one that's going to make a difference, and what outcomes can you provide for people?
So let's talk about the corporate side a little bit more. For anyone listening who's interested in climbing the corporate ladder or looking for that next big job, obviously you've worked at Amazon and Zillow. What is some advice that you can give besides just those tactical resume tips you just gave? What are some other advice you can give for people looking to land those huge jobs at big corporations like that?
Yeah, I think continue learning. So what I realized is like I went to school multiple times. Like I have a couple master's degrees, but you don't need that. Some of that's nice to have, but like get a certificate in AI. Obviously there's the YouTube University or listening to Ryan, right? And I think that
I
will
love
help.
YouTube University.
I mean, you're like a doctorate in YouTube University, Ryan. I'm pretty sure, honorary doctorate. But I mean, just constantly learning, right? And I think leveraging certificates at universities is nice because it's a stamp of approval on a resume. But a lot of stuff I've learned just from YouTube, right? But I do the 3 month course, pay the grand or whatever to get that stamp, right? So I think there's a lot of small things like that, like just stamping the credibility, which is the same thing with branding, right? On social media, having that you worked with Nike or having that you worked with this, whatever firms you work with, is like that will, register in people's brains. So it's not that different when you're personal branding in corporate America. Get some of those brands, get some certificates, update your resume to articulate it properly. And I think, that's really like the foundation. I think that'll really help people get to that next level.
And I've been out of the 9 to 5 world for a few years now. So what would you say to someone who maybe is looking to get back into that from a 9 to 5 role, right?
You're not coming back, Ryan?
No, I don't plan on coming back unless I get some like wild offer from one of the biggest companies in the world. You know what I mean? One of those where you can't turn down. I know. But what's your advice for someone who's maybe on the fence of entrepreneurship, startup world, or corporate world? I guess what are the pros and cons there?
Yeah. So this is like, having played both sides at the highest level, this is my best advice, right?
And that's why I ask you, because you have played both sides at a high level.
Because I think it's always like, it feels like the grass is greener. And I've been full-time entrepreneurship. I've been full-time like big tech. And the grass isn't greener. And I think the mindset I have is make the grass that you have as green as possible. And what I mean by that is, one example of that, and I tell people this all the time, if you're running a $1 million business, right? Let's say you have your own business and you're running $1 million business. If your margins, let's say you're doing something where your margins are 10%, that's $100,000 net profit. But you're working every single day. You're probably managing, 10 people. You have all this stress and all this, right? And it's like, or you could work a job that's maybe making 80K and not have any of that stress and get off at 5 o'clock. So, and it's not to say that obviously option number one, where you're running your own business, has scale, right? You can scale that, and hopefully you are. But it's like, dude, if you're making 50 to 100K, that's a $500,000 to $1 million business at 10% margin with no stress. You know what I mean? So, I think that's a huge point of like context of like, everybody's like, hey, I want to do the business. I want to do business. It's like, do you? And then on top of that, definitely with that in mind, like, use your moonlight it. That, like, you're not like you're gonna make maybe you can. I'm not saying all use cases, right? But the rule, not the exception, is like moonlight it. Spend 3 hours a day consistently, every single day for 6 months working on something. Make a 6 to 8 month plan for launch, right? Like, think in those terms. Think of, okay, if I wanted to start this today, I would have to get customer discovery. I want to ask people. I want to give people free stuff. I want to give feedback, and then I want to launch it, and then be able to sell my first 100 products in 6 months. That would be the framework I would like advise. Otherwise, it's like you may be setting yourself up for failure, and it's like, it's not just going to be like this magical thing,
right? And this might not be popular advice, but I'm also a huge proponent of people in the corporate world maybe doing side hustles, right? Learning skills on the side where eventually they can go do that full time. And I'm so glad looking back that I had a corporate role. I had a role in a smaller company. If I didn't have those roles and kind of wake up to what corporate America really is versus pulling up LinkedIn or Twitter and like reading all this stuff that's not really real, I'm so glad I had those experiences, because that kind of pushed me to jump into entrepreneurship versus if I didn't have those experiences.
And the thing is too, and I would imagine, I can't speak for your experiences personally, Ryan, but like a lot of the corporate experience I've had was, not every single day was perfect, but I learned a lot. I got data sets, I got data, I learned how to manage teams, how to think about things at a larger level. Like, you're dealing with, maybe a $50 to $100 million project. And it's like, you're not going to get that off rip running your own small business. Right. So I think you can learn from any and everything. And I think that should be the motto. And I would imagine, like, you got your spark to do your own thing, right? Maybe that was the leverage you needed to, I don't want to do this, right? But also maybe there are some things you learned. So, I think some people demonize on each side. People demonize it, and it's like, maybe it makes sense. Maybe you want to just take it easy for a couple of years, stack up, and then launch your thing. I think it doesn't matter what tools you use. It's like, what is your plan, right? What is your 3-year plan?
Yeah, for sure. And I remember back at Meredith, it's Dotdash Meredith now, I was in charge with another guy running multi-million-dollar ad campaigns. I would have never had that opportunity if I
Yeah,
just jumped into the world of entrepreneurship. And I'm also getting experience with 5 to 10 industry leading tools that Meredith, by the way, is fronting the bill for, right?
yeah,
So you can
yeah.
kind of learn all these tools and skills at someone else's expense, which is what I recommend for people just getting into it.
That's right. That's right. And all the courses I mentioned, like, hey, you asked, what would you do to like leverage into top companies? And I said, do certificates, resources. Dude, even if you get it to a lower level at a job or entry level, they have a lot of resources and tools and certificates. A lot of them already that are available to you. You know what I mean? They have the AWS certificates, the
Right.
Google certificates for free. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like a lot of people don't even leverage that in corporate America. And some people don't. Some people aren't hungry and want to grind up the corporate ladder or run a business, and that's fine. But a lot of people, I would say for the people out there, they're wondering like if the grass is greener. It's like, dude, look in what you have available to you. There's so many tools that you probably haven't even leveraged or
For sure.
opportunities.
What are some other tips that you have for navigating the corporate world? I remember also back in my days in corporate America, networking was so big in corporate America.
Yeah.
You'd have people fly in from New York City, these top VPs that you get to have lunch with, right? Where if I just did that, it looks like a sales pitch now if I'm reaching out to someone. So I think there's a lot of networking opportunities in corporate that are very difficult to get if you're not in that ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think when you're in corporate, that's like a huge part of it. So let's just talk about being in corporate America. Okay, I'll kind of answer maybe another question too, kind of tying these together. Because one of the things I learned when I went into corporate, right? So when I graduated college, I went straight into running a food runner with Russell, right?
Cedar Valley Food Runner, yeah.
Yeah, out of college, right? So I didn't have any corporate experience out of college. I ran into a tech startup, and then we sold that. So when I got into principal after that, for doing that for a year and a half, I was so confused, man, because nothing, when you're running a startup, every dollar matters. I need this dollar to make a return. And there's no room for error, right? Because otherwise, you're not paying for something.
It's a different mindset. You're wearing a million hats every single day.
Yes, you're wearing a million hats. The budget isn't just unlimited. It's not let's try, but the thing is like this has to work. I need to get this client, right? So when I got to corporate America, it was not to say that everything had to be perfect, but there was a lot of lacks. There wasn't really there were dumb ideas that were being funded, and you're just like, what is going on, dude? And so I think there's just something to that mindset of coming into to corporate America where it's like, I was really focused on the customer and revenue, right? Because that's kind of like how you're trained when you're running a business. You don't really have an option. Versus corporate America, it's a lot more relationship based, right? So there's people that may get to the top that they just knew how to leverage, and not the top, right? But I mean, there may be managers or whatever that just knew how to leverage relationships, and that's so important in corporate America. The politics are important,
For sure.
whether you like it or not. And I didn't really like that, but I did learn it enough to be dangerous, and it was good. It's a good lesson to learn because even when you're running a business, you're not going to like everybody, but luckily in your business, you can fire your customers. You can't really do that in corporate America.
You can make a lot of money navigating the corporate game.
You can, and that's not, and and unfortunately, sometimes it aligns really well, right? But sometimes it's a trade-off of politics and adding value. And I didn't necessarily like that, right? So you could be really good. There'd be groups of people that are really good at playing politics, and they may move up, or they may be in charge of different things that might not even have the best ideas, or might not even be the best for the customer.
Or nepotism,
these things exist. Happened with Bronny and LeBron, right? Like, it happens. I'm not mad at it, right? But it's a matter of like, where do I want to have my heart at? What gets me excited to wake up? And honestly, what does that for me is driving data, driving revenue, getting into data, providing great products. And so unfortunately, half of my time wasn't even doing that. It was doing it half of the time, and then half the time was like navigating unimportant, conversations or things that didn't really.
No, I get it. I've been there. Yeah. So I want to talk about some gimmicks now in corporate. We don't have to get into everything here, but when I read the 4-Hour Work Week, this was back in like 2019, really tuned a light bulb.
It's crazy too. Sorry, not to cut you off, but that book came out in like 2004.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
Actually,
He was way ahead of his time. Yeah,
Yes.
Tim Ferriss was ahead of his time for
Yeah.
sure. But he
Yeah.
had this quote, the choose uncertainty over unhappiness for sure. But he had this story that he
Mhm.
gave, and I'm sitting there in corporate America reading this in real time, kind of like almost referencing what he's talking to is happening. And what he said was, now try walking around with a stack of papers with the phone up. You'll look like the busiest, most productive employee in corporate America. And I'm like, I like dropped the book. I was like, oh my God. I was like,
Yeah.
corporate rewards busyness over actual production. And that's when
Yeah.
it clicked for me. So what are some other gimmicks besides that one that you want to
So
talk about?
yeah, I mean, and I would say this, man. I would say, I think that's actually super funny, especially because it's like 2004, and you can picture like the 2000 Windows XP computers, blah blah blah.
Cubicles, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a lot different now, right? By the way, like tech, especially like top tech companies, it's a lot different. And I would even if you're looking at all the layoffs that have happened recently, like they're trying to get more and more out of each employee. So I don't think it's as easy to like do what Tim Ferriss was mentioning in 2004. I don't think it's one to one because I mean companies are getting smarter and they're laying off people, and more people are individually have to do more work. So I don't know. I think it varies for department. It varies for company. But I don't know.
But you've definitely had that experience in corporate where you have employees that are paid way more than what they're delivering and they're not working. You have to admit that you've seen that before.
Yeah, like I said, it's been but the times I've seen it where it's like negligible, where it's like, all right, like this guy shouldn't be here. It's a bit more complicated because in order to fire that guy, they have to have like a 6 to 8 month process, otherwise they get
Oh
sued.
yeah, training and all the resources that go into
They
hiring
have to
again.
like, well, yeah, and they're liable, like they're liable if the person come back and say they didn't treat me right. So there's always that these big companies have to worry about. I think smaller businesses don't worry about that as much, but smaller businesses get the boot because then they have to pay unemployment, right? And if you're only making 100 grand a year profit like that, so it's. I'm not saying it's a perfect science, is what I'm saying, but I mean I agree in general that like your time, if you're able to do what you're doing, right? I think what you're doing was like the perfect trade-off, right? Where you're saying, hey, I know the value of my time and I'm getting paid X amount of money from this company. And I know that I can make 10 times that if I put it into my own thing. I think that is the way to think about it. And I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all.
I think a lot of it comes down to risk tolerance too. I was watching a video the other day where this guy actually made a contrarian viewpoint of that. It's actually more risky to work a 9 to 5 than to start your own business. And it sounds crazy, but he explained it as if you start your own company, what are you going to do, DJ? You're going to learn everything, right? You're going to learn everything about business. Well, let's say it fails. Worst case scenario. You're a lot more marketable now to a lot of companies versus people who just did the traditional route. They're trying to flood their resume against hundreds of other people through AI detection, where you have that entrepreneurship experience and you gained a lot of skills along the way. So I kind of agree with him when he explained it like that.
Yeah. So what was the quote he said?
So he said that a 9 to 5 is actually
It's
more
more
risky
risky.
than
Okay.
starting your own
So
business because of all the things you
yeah.
learn from it.
Yeah, I do. Again, having been on to both sides, like I could speak to both sides, right? And so it been riskier. I think is valuable, and actually, it's funny enough, full circle moment. That's what you told me in like April, right? When I was thinking about quitting my job to do the startup I wanted to do full time, and I did it, man. And you said, dude, worst case scenario, you have a resume, you'll get a job again. And it's
We over exaggerate our worst case scenarios big
yeah,
time.
dude. And so I like that. That was that. I mean, that honestly was the advice that gave me like that was like the last straw. And I took a moment. I took a chance to do this other startup I was working on and work on Map.media, which those things are going great. They didn't replace my income completely yet, which is why I'm going back into corporate. But it's like, dude, yeah, that was exactly what I needed. And this last 6, 7 months, the experience I've gained running consulting, running businesses, is invaluable. And the free time and the ability to think through and plan out what I want in the future, invaluable. The other side of that though is, and I've seen this, man, you could, I'm not saying this is not all companies, right? But if you get into some of the top companies that are giving you stock, like you go, if you got stock at Amazon 50K and you just made 100K a year, that stock is probably worth like $1 million now. You know what I mean? Like, so I think there's something too, if you can get in a good groove, you get in a big company and you don't need to, you don't have that entrepreneurial fire where you have to be adding value every day. Dude, some people's best job may be to just, hey, make 100K, get stock, stay at a top company for 10 years. And a lot of times, if you're just doing the bare minimum and you're doing a good job, dude, you're going to get promoted, right? So, and you're going to make more money and get more stock. So I think, honestly, if I wasn't entrepreneurially driven and wanting to do all this stuff and et cetera, dude, I'd probably just stay at big tech, get a big tech company, get stock, and just hang out.
Well, you mentioned get stock, though. You brought up a good point about equity. I think a lot of people in corporate America are very familiar with the term equity or incentive, right? If I don't have equity or incentive in the company that I'm working for, why would I kill myself to make people who are already rich even richer? I'm serious when I say that, though, that a lot of people don't think of it like that with the equity side. I think you always have to go into something thinking of equity and incentive.
Yeah, I think it's the whole package, man. Because I mean, I would say this: if you're in big tech and you're making 125 a year for 10 years, and let's say you get married and your wife's doing the same thing, dude, that's a great household. Live below your means. That's a good life. You know what I'm saying? So I think it varies for each person. It varies for what your goals are. And so yeah, I don't look at things so binary. It's just like, but it just depends on what you want. And I know what I want. I want to be excited about doing something.
You're a creator, bro. You want to make a difference.
Yeah, right. And that's not, I realize, and the thing is, Ryan, that's not everybody. And that's why some people are just better employees. And that's not a bad thing. Some people are really good managers. I could not be like an operational manager, like for long term. I don't have the brain for it, right? But I can see strategy, vision, getting the numbers, data, finances. So I think, it's like knowing your strengths. And I think that's one of the points Tim Ferriss talked about too, which is like building your team, right? Having the right people in place that, you know what I mean, your skill set and what matches well with that. I think that's a valuable skill to have.
For sure. I want to talk about AI now. Let's transition this a little bit. Okay. I personally believe when it comes to like corporate America and just the white collar workforce in general, I think AI, it's already here to some extent, but when we have agents coming in the mix next year, that's the hot buzzword for 2025. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, what an AI agent is, right now, it could probably replace, in my opinion, a quarter of the white-collar workforce doing menial tasks like data entry, receptionists. You know where I'm going with this, right? Mm-hmm. All those menial white-collar tasks. What are your thoughts on just like AI's impact in corporate America, and what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's unprecedented, which is like a non-answer, right? But, I think you're right. And I think it's hard to put a number on those things until it happens. Because people said the same thing 3 years ago about today, right? We thought 20% of the workforce would be whatever. And it probably could with the technology that exists today. But it's also about the infrastructure. So these companies, they're on, they have real life customers, they have real life stuff going on where like their integration periods are typically like over time. And so them just automatically stopping all of the customer service people and just implementing like day one probably won't happen. We'll probably be able to see it happening. Like, okay, they do a test run, 10 people, or they start replacing them. So I think it'll be more so like that, especially at like, we're talking about bigger companies at scale. Now, smaller companies, I think that's going to give them the edge to compete with the bigger companies.
I agree.
Right? So, so it's interesting. Like, I guess my experience, what I've seen is like some of these things, even though they're drastic changes, you still have like 6 to 8 months to kind of see it happening, which within those 6 to 8 months, if people can see that, those customer service reps might start switching to new jobs, right? Or the new, whatever job creations are needed after that or because of that. So I think it'll be an integration period where things, whatever, but I don't know. It's just funny. Like there's like the study that was like every 50 years this happens, right? So with the car, it happened, right? All the people who were managing courses just were out of job. No, they probably just over time end up working at a factory. So I don't know. We'll see, right? Like it could. I'm not saying I could see the future, but I think it'll be a transitional period where people can kind of see what's happening.
I look at like these McKinsey consultants, right, that are charging buku dollars for their work and whatever. And one of my favorite creators posted this tweet, a while ago, and it stuck with me. It said, most consultants are just $500 an hour versions of ChatGPT. And I think there's a lot of truth to that to some extent, because in our pocket, DJ, we have ChatGPT that has access to the entire internet and all the other data that OpenAI has trained it, versus before this, what would you do? Rely on free sources from Google, hire a consultant for X hundred or thousands of dollars an hour.
And it can synthesize the information.
For sure. Synthesize it, make it sound in layman's terms. I mean, you can do whatever with it. And I think people haven't fully grasped that yet, in my opinion, especially on the corporate level.
Yeah. And that's where it's like, Ryan, you got to realize too, you're ahead of the curve, right? Like, not even, the early adopter like curve. Like, dude, you're like top 3%. You know what I'm saying? Most people, I think the majority of people haven't even used, like, majority of people in the world don't even know what ChatGPT is. Like, just billions of people, most people don't even know what it is. So I think we're talking about like the 1% within the 10%. You know what I mean? And so, I think there will be changes. I think that people like you that are ahead of the curve will be able to start seeing things in real time. And I think there's a lot of opportunity being at the head of the curve. I think most people will just start using it like ChatGPT, the free version. That's probably where
That's what most people are using it for right now.
You know what I'm saying? So like even the more advanced things. So I think for me, I'm excited about I pay for the $20 a month version. I haven't got to the 200 yet.
I just did it for my viewers, bro. I did it for a video to try to get views. I'm going to ask you about your tool stack next, but continue with what you were saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is like, I'm a functional user. Like, I think you're really nice because I could watch your videos and I can see like what's coming, what's available, etc. For me, it's like, dude, all right, let me I may like, if I need an email, I'll copy the thread and I'll say, hey, give me a response, right? Like, I just need it functionally. But I think over time, as the tools will get more advanced to making it more user friendly, right? So now the tools, the ChatGPTs will be available. Like right now, they just added a search feature. You don't know how long I've been waiting on that. Because it's like that's like a user thing where it's like, dude, I don't want to start a new one. When was the last time I talked about this? Like maybe it'll eventually become like a Google Drive where I can like format it. For me, that's what I need. Yeah,
so they just released projects. I mean, you can organize chats and stuff and add knowledge. ChatGPT projects came out like a week ago.
I saw. That's what I'm saying, dude. So I think it's like, dude, there's a lot. And the thing is, most people haven't even got that advanced usage yet, right? So I don't know. I think it's like, yes, when we're talking about the top 1% of what's going on and what I'm seeing in corporate and the top companies, what they're doing, that's like, that's like the exception, not the rule at this point in time. But I think over time, it'll become more and more normalized. But I think it's just going to be integration period. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned ChatGPT Plus. Are you dabbling in any other AI tools?
Not to be fair, like I have dabbled, right? So I've used, like, I'll pay for a month subscription, try it and whatever, right? Opus Clip, for example.
You try to Claude at all or anything like that?
Mid-Journey, right? So for me, that's what I'm saying. It's functional, right? As long as ChatGPT doesn't not do what I needed to do, I'm just going to use it, right? Like, it's kind of like Google versus Bing or Yahoo. Like, if somebody was like, yeah, Yahoo's way better, I'm like, cool, I'm just going to go to Google. Right? So, and I know you mentioned Claude, but it's like, you need like 4 sentences to look different in like 5 paragraphs. It's like, for me, can it kind of do the thing? All right, but I've used Opus, mainly Midjourney, all the like main tools for real. Midjourney once ChatGPT got the images, I canceled that because it's like it does what I needed to do. Opus Clip, interestingly enough, from a content creator standpoint, I actually much better like creating my own videos and cutting it myself in CapCut. Which CapCut has some AI stuff, like it'll automatically take all the filler words out and stuff like that. So I mean, it's enough tool, but I think it's interesting because I'm like, and also I'm not using I'm not podcast, it's not long form. So a lot of my stuff is like boxing or me at the gym, which I saw Opus Clip did just add a action based one, but it just is beta, still trying it out. So for now, I need it to look a certain way. I know what I want it to look like. So I think that is an interesting part to like to videos. Like, I'm not doing videos at scale. I'm just posting maybe once a week when I feel like it. Do I really need AI for that? No, I'd rather just take an hour and just make the video exactly the way I want it. But like with Map.media and some of the things we're doing with our merchandise, yes, our designers leveraging, Midjourney to get inspiration, get ideas at scale.
And that's one of the best use cases for AI. I always tell people is ideation and just getting inspiration if you have writer's block and you need it snapped. But one thing to your point, you mentioned how ChatGPT had DALL-E where they integrated images. This brings me to the point of, AI startups, like the AI startup world, right? You're in the startup world, not necessarily AI startup world, but the way I see this going is you have OpenAI with ChatGPT, Google with Gemini. They're becoming more multimodal, or multimodality is kind of the buzzword over time, where they can create text, images, video, eventually audio, right? On and on and on. What is the point of these like AI startups anymore if these big players just keep making their models more multimodal to do other functions?
Yeah, and that's what I realized early on, right? Because it's a matter of scale. And so, for example, one good example of this is when ChatGPT first launched, there was this AI ChatGPT plugin that did like PDFs, and now
The
you can just
plugins,
do it
that's old
directly.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's 6 months ago was old school, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and this is where I go into also like we haven't really talked about this specifically, but like how I value my time and what I spend my time in, whether that's corporate or a startup idea or an idea I just launched or one of the businesses. I look at that as I look at that, dude. Like, do I want to spend time working on an AI thing when I know ChatGPT is going to have 90% market share, right? Like, it doesn't, it's not worth. It's like, would you create a new search engine? Probably
People have
not. I
tried.
mean, it just, yeah, exactly. And so I think some of these things I kind of assume that the big giants are going to handle it. Now, and the thing is, once you kind of have that mindset, then I think their value is okay, what are they never going to touch? Right? Or what are they might touch, but it may take so much time for them to get there. Right? Or what are those niches? And one example, there's this one startup out of UT, I forget the name of it, but they were doing, they have a GPT model, probably GPT wrapper, I don't know. Maybe they made it from scratch. But they're scanning all of the available data on like ear infections or it was some like something like that, to where they could diagnose it within like a statistically significant rate. That's something that they could sell to somebody. Now, granted, because somebody else built the same thing, but the thing is, the value that they have is that they went and found all of the images that related to this that exist, right? Which takes time. You have to go to
So
all
they
these
niched down to a specific audience.
niche is that would be the only real way, because at that point you're not selling the wrapper, you're not selling the AI tool, you're selling the data. That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day, is data. Because the companies are going to be able to, ChatGPT call, they're going to be able to do all the things, right? But they have all this data, but if you ask ChatGPT, hey, can you give me all the sources of, it's going to take forever. You still have to manually probably upload the data, get all this stuff, organize it, et cetera. So I think the key here is data and niching down are the AI tools that are going to like really make a difference. And then, even then, they're probably not going to be a revolutionary. They need to make that and then sell for
Right.
2 million in a couple of years.
Well, even data and niching down, I mean, that's advice that you could carry really to anything in the startup world. So I'm glad you said that. But anyways, DJ, I'm going to wrap this all up and not take any more of your time here. I appreciate you hopping on the show. Any other final notes on this episode that we talked about from corporate world, startup, entrepreneurship, AI, etc.?
No, man. No, I think I'll just summarize it though. I think niche down, right? Even in corporate America, right? What is it that you really want to do? Like, I'm like data scientist for
Yeah,
marketing.
get really good at one skill and master it.
Yeah. Or like a combination of skills that make you like really streamline. Same thing for startups. AI is going to happen and it's changing how we look at things, but don't be scared of it. Learn it and then find ways to add value in that world. And yeah, man, just the grass isn't greener. Find out what you want to do, whether it's corporate, your business, etc., and figure out how to make it work. Lean startup methodology, 4-hour work week methodology, right? It's small chunks over 6 to 8 months. Build something great.
Yeah, I love that advice. Where can people follow you online?
At Crown Me DJ on Instagram, and Darian Jones, MBA, MSTC on LinkedIn.
I'll leave all those links in the show notes below.
Thanks,
Well, Darian, thank you so much for joining this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. And thank you again to everyone for listening to this episode. Be sure to tune in again next time.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan. See ya.